Good morning, everyone. Happy happy Thursday, week till Thanksgiving. It is 11 o'clock on the nose. Welcome to Behind the Door series. I'm Trent Morrow, owner of L&B Counseling. I tried something a little different today. I put a poll up. The topic today is Are the adults okay? Um, there was a podcast I listened to recently from Tristan Harris, who's one of the co-creators of The Social Dilemma, and his podcast was Are the Kids Okay? And they had Jonathan Haidt, who wrote a book talking about some of the things that we talked about last week on, what's going on with the youth. There's these things that are kind of co-occurring, technology and depression, anxiety, hospitalizations, self-harming behavior, those kind of things that are going on at the same time. So um, I listened to another podcast, and there's another person that wrote a book, Adam Antler. I believe that's the right last name. Um, and along the lines of what's going on with technology and screens and all those kind of things. And as we talked about last week, screens aren't necessarily the problem. So the fact that you or your kids are on video all day, maybe doing your meetings, or your kids are doing their teams or their Zooms or whatever it may be as far as learning, um, that's not necessarily indicative of it being a problem. And so what I wanted to get into today was just what is, are we okay as adults? Put the poll up, and the poll is basically if you're on your phone less than an hour a day, somewhere between 1 to 3 and over 4. So, spoiler alert, most of the American adults who own a phone, and that's over 90 some percent that own smartphones, are on their phone over 4 hours a day. It's one of the things that can get a little embarrassing when we have kids come into the office with their parents and we start talking about, technology and screens and things like that, and they'll turn and say, "Well, how long are you on your phone, mom or dad?" And it's usually deflected. Well, that we're not here for me. But one of the growing populations when it comes to screen addiction is adults, and specifically middle-aged women, because of how much they're on technology. And I think, not that we're going to get too far into that or point fingers or anything like that, but it just shows that even though our brains are fully developed, they've been fully developed, we didn't grow up on this stuff. It just shows the power that it can have at times with influencing our behaviors. Um, Most of the day, if not all the day, ask a question of yourself. How far away am I from my phone at any given moment? Is it on me, on some person, or within hands length, or is it a little farther away? We know if the phone is in the room, and even if it's turned face down, notifications off, no volume, any of that stuff, that it is already a distraction because it is in the room. It's just a visual stimulus. And so some of the things that we're figuring out, and all this is, you know, with me learning stuff, trying to read the literature that's coming out, the research, those kind of things, and not being anecdotal, but just incorporating this science into our practice is, you think about how the phone operates on our brainstem. We have what's called negativity bias and confirmation bias. And so, if you take social media, for instance, we are predisposed to pick up on negativity. We're a social species. If you think back not that long ago, 100, 200, 300 years, we lived in small groups, and how we interacted with that group was keen on how we survived. We needed the tribe, the group, whatever you may want to call it, to help us survive. And so we negativity bias developed out of that. So if there's something going on within the group, within the tribe, maybe we did something that was not received well, you would want to make amends and change that behavior so you would not continue to do that thing, which may get you ostracized and increase your chances of, dying and being separated. And so negativity bias over, millennium of years has developed for us to pay attention to these things. And social media, same reason we look at car crashes when we're driving by or anything else that's going on. It's the reason why the news is filled with that negative stuff, especially in the beginning. And then they throw at the very end a nice little story to wrap up the newscast, but it's because we're predisposed to that. It's a very psychological thing. And so social media cues in on that. That's why most of your feeds and most of the things you pay attention to is the negative stuff, even though most of it may be more positive. And so that negativity bias causes us to look and kind of may even go down a wormhole of getting more information and getting more ramped up and more visceral. I know that's obviously those things that have happened during the politics and whatnot, and even with COVID to some extent. So you've got the negativity bias playing on us, and then you've got the confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is, am I doing this right? Is this correct? You want, and that's a like or a share or a follow or anything else like along those lines. And so that confirmation bias makes us feel better, makes us feel like, we're good with the group, we're good with the tribe, I've got good standing here. And generally, when it comes to confirmation bias too, the other kind of thing that works well when it comes to these phones and whatnot is, we're wanting to have some level of mastery, some level of control. It makes us feel safer. That goes back to feeling safe in the tribe too, and that negativity bias. So all these things are interplaying, and it just shows the power that it has to impact a fully developed brain that did not grow up with these little devices in our hand. And didn't come on like we've been saying for the last 5, 10 years. We had no real wiring that came to this, but this came in and it's now impacting our wiring. You see it when you're driving. People can't put their phone down. It's important to read or tweet or whatever it is that they're doing. It used to be, people were just fumbling with the mirrors when we used to drive and grow up, but now it's how many people are on their phones, and how many accidents are caused because of that need to look at the phone, check it, look at the notification, all those distractions. There's so much studies on just looking at your phone for half a second, what that does and increases your chances for a wreck. Um, so screens, especially in the time of COVID, have really fulfilled our psychological needs from a social aspect and feeling, wanting to be connected. It's something that, obviously we didn't have access to or don't have access to. And with things starting to kind of go back to the way they were as far as shutting down and whatnot and it getting colder, we may be even more prone to go to our screens. And not that it's necessarily a bad thing. We've talked about to have that connection and to want to be with people, and see what other people are doing, but you just have to be aware of that negativity bias and that confirmation bias because that is how things are showing up in your feed, by what you look at and what you pay attention to. And so they're going to keep sending you those things. So if it's a negative kind of route that you've taken, you're going to keep getting negative things. That's how the algorithms work for these different companies. And so just be aware what to do and how much you've been on your phone, which kind of leads us into what do you do with the problem, from an intervention standpoint. I think it's important to have a baseline for you to know how much you're on your device. Whether you have an Android or an iPhone, iOS operating system, they've now put all these screen times on your phone. So you can see what you're doing, how much you're doing in a day. You can see how often you're picking up the phone, how often you're glancing at the phone. You can get all this really good data if you want to pay attention to it. And so it's kind of like having a hard conversation with yourself, and knowing where you are as an adult, to see like, all right, well, what I'm doing, how long I'm on the phone, makes sense. It feels good. A lot of people will justify it. Well, it's educational. I'm watching Netflix on it. I'm watching YouTube, all these different things. It's my entertainment. And all that may be well and good. It's just something you want to be aware of so you know where your baseline is and to say, like, well, maybe I need to cut back, just like you would if you were eating sweets or anything that's high fat. Do I need to cut back a little or do I need to cut back a lot? And so, how is this impacting my relationships? How is it impacting my time when the phone is around and maybe shouldn't? So, whether that's at dinner or having talks with significant other or your friends or whatever, like just kind of asking yourself, is this normal? Is this healthy? And are these numbers in line for where they should be? If they're not, then you just got to figure out how to roll that back a little bit. How much going back to that duration pathway outcome thing, like what is the outcome that you want? Is it to be on the phone less so you have more time to do other things, or to have better conversations or better relationships, or to exercise more, or whatever the case may be? And then you kind of roll it back from a duration standpoint. Well, I'm on the phone 4 hours. I'd like to have that to be 3.5 or 3 hours and 45 minutes. There's some really good apps out there now in the marketplace. Moment is one of them. And you may even do being able to develop or use stuff on iOS. I'm not familiar with Android with what all is out there, but you can get prompts that, hey, you've picked your phone up X amount of times. You've been on your phone X amount of time, or you've been on your phone for 20 straight minutes. So it's just a nice way to remind you that, hey, you've got a goal here. You're getting close to that goal. You're getting close to that cap on the time that you allotted for yourself per session or for the total of the day. And it's just a nice conscious reminder that, all right, I set a goal. Let me stick with it because when you're doing something hard, remember you get that dopamine, it feels better. And you'll probably feel better when you leave the phone alone. If it's too hard to put it right next to you, like right now, I've got the phone in the other room, put it in the other room. If you're driving in the car and it's too hard to just put it right there next to you, put it in the back seat or put it in the trunk. Put it in some place that you can't cheat or it makes it harder to cheat. And that way, and then kind of take an assessment. You can use that emotional temperature thing that we use here a lot at L&B counseling of like, how am I feeling? How's my brain feeling? You may even need to do more of a hard detox and say, I'm going to take a day off. Or maybe Thanksgiving we don't use our phones at all since that's coming up. Look for some opportunities to be a good role model for your friends and your significant others. Probably helps if you have someone that can help keep you accountable that you're going to do it with. It's kind of like exercising. You're more likely to go to the gym if you told somebody you're going to go to the gym because they're going to be there waiting on you. Because this stuff is hard. This stuff is hard, especially if you think about for your kids. It's also hard for us as adults. If you think there's things going on out in the world and that you need to be privy to it and keep up with it, and I know a lot of people will say that, well, I just need to know. And it's like, well, how much are you really gaining if you don't pick it up for 30 minutes or an hour? How much are you losing? So to have someone that, or a couple people that have said, let's take the day off. We won't, if we're going to communicate, we'll do it through text. We're not going to do social media. Let's just see what happens. And that way you can give yourself, your brain, a little clarity break, like we talk about a lot, and hopefully it will make you feel a little bit better psychologically because we know from engagement, and I'm on Facebook right now, and I might get in trouble for this, but we know from a regret meter, over 40% of people regret being on social media, especially with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Then so they're not getting great things out of it, but yet they keep coming back to it for that number to be that high. And so just things to be aware of. You make your own decisions, obviously, but just be aware that this stuff's going on, how it's going on, and that this stuff is really powerful. Last week we did kind of an experiment and I purposely titled the behind the door last week saying screen times is not a problem because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, excuse me, I talked more about celebrity status, child actors, and then some of the issues that go on with kid actors and how that may relate to kids being on social media and popularity chasing. And it got flagged, and they would not allow us to boost the post. So we couldn't send it out to the rest of the world like we've done with every other behind the door. And so last week I just retitled it saying screen time is not a problem. And I'm assuming the bots at Facebook did not look at the actual video and just looked at the title and they allowed us to boost it. So they're very proprietary. They're protecting their product. And these are just like more public service announcements of like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's why it's going on. This is what it's doing to your brain potentially. This is maybe what it's doing to your kiddo's brain potentially. And these are ways that you can manage some of those behaviors so you don't have this automation to continually come back to the phone. Because this stuff's going to become more complex. They're not going to change their business model because it's very successful. I don't blame them. Um, and it's only going to become more immersed when we start getting into more VR and all these other things that are going to be coming down the line in short order. So I don't see that anyone has any questions. I know that most of y'all watch this stuff after the fact. So as always, we thank you for being here. Next week we'll have off because it's going to be Thanksgiving. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, is healthy, and enjoys the weather coming up this weekend and can get outside and be away from their devices for an extended amount of time. just to give them a break. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks so much, and y'all have a great day.